catching subclass exceptions. A catch clue for a superclass will also match any of its subclasses. If you want to catch exceptions of both a superclass type and a subclass type, put subclass first in the catch sequence. So let's look at the full list of Java exceptions. So in this, here's what you see is the super throwable class, and under the throwable class we have an exception class, and all the way down we have an error class. So under the exception class, so we have a runtime exception, which is a super class of some of the exception class we saw earlier, arithmetic exception and index out of bounds exception. So as we can see here, you can use either runtime exception or the superclass exception to catch any of the subclass exceptions. We just have to make sure that if we're trying to catch both a subclass and a superclass exception, the subclass catch block must come before the superclass exception. So let's see this in the example. Now let's look at this example. So here again we have a try block followed by two catch blocks, index out of bounds exception and arithmetic exception. So those two exception types are unrelated, however they both are the subclasses of the exception class. So we can actually use the catch using the superclass exception, and what I'm going to do is this time I'm going to print e.getMessage. Right, so let's see what this program will do. So in this case n is set to 0, so we're gonna catch an exception here, and then let's see how we're going to handle this. So compile, run. So here we get the try to divide by 0. So we catch the arithmetic exception here. Even though there is a super exception here, we're able to catch it with the subclass exception and handle it. So in the case that n is set to 2 and we don't have this exception now we have index out of bounds, and then we're gonna try to test this again. And as you can see, we caught this with index out of bounds here. So how will this work? So in the case that, so this is index out of bounds, what if we do not have this? So we only have arithmetic exception and the superclass exception. So in that case, we were able to catch the index out of bounds exception with the superclass exception, and we print the message that says index 10 out of bounds for length 3. So I'm going to reverse what I did, and this time I'm going to delete the arithmetic exception, and then I'll try to catch the arithmetic exception with superclass exception. So if I set this to 0, here we go. So we got the message was divide by 0. So again, you can use either the subclass exception and the superclass exception to catch the same exception. The only condition is the let's try this. You cannot put the alright, so you cannot put the superclass before the subclass. So this is gonna cause a compiling error. So let's try this. Here you go. So we have right, Java C index error has been caught, an error. See, the program was not compiled, so we got an compiler error. So what it says is that it says index out of bounds exception has already been caught. So since the exception E will catch the error before this, so basically there's no need for this one. So this is the type of error you're going to get. So we better fix it. and then make sure that the superclass comes after the subclass.